All right. Well, hello out there in podcast land. We are here back again with the crew down in the church basement under the sanctuary in this cool little vibey room. And we got Alec the Seekins right here.
How's it going?
Yeah. Yes. We got Ryan the Romeo.
Right here.
And always we got Dalton running the controls.
Hello.
And I'm driving today as David Stockton. Well, I'm always David Stockton.
I think you're driving as Eminem,
part of
right?
David Stockton.
Whether I'm driving or not. And yes, I am not the real Slim Shady.
Alec and I are just Uber driving.
Yeah. It's so good to not be the guy with the weirdest hair on staff.
It is. Wow.
I know, right?
Yeah, I was noticing your dread was really close to touching my leg. I didn't know what to think about that.
I've got the most boring hair of the three of us, I guess is the way to say that.
We are here to talk. We're here to talk about some stuff. This is basically our deep dive moment where we do our Sunday morning sermons. But sometimes there's some things that we like to dive a little deeper into because we have a little more time and we're not quite in a Sunday morning context. So that's what we're doing on this. But before we do, we actually have some things to catch up on. Last week, we did not have a podcast come out because it was just too good. It was just
Alec and I were
too
like, this
good
is too
for this
good to
world.
release. We can't let this out.
Alec and Ryan actually did one, and you both felt great about it.
That was,
but the
it's
audio malfunctioned, and so we didn't get it. But it's still in, you guys.
Yeah.
So
It's in there.
Still can come out.
Yeah.
And you were talking some about the political realities of going on in our world, especially in light of the Trump assassination attempt. Thank you for helping me with that. On Sunday, one of the times I mentioned it, I said Trump assassination, and Ryan was like, "You need to remember to say attempt because he's
Remember,
alive."
it was an attempt.
So that was a good catch there.
It's one word that is kind of crucial. Every now and then you're like, but that one's pretty important.
Yeah. That was funny. I was like, oh boy, yeah. But we have new information even on that situation because now not only is it that there was an assassination attempt on Trump, then we had the Republican National Convention, where they spoke about the good life. We'll get to that, which Alex spoke about the good life in his message last Sunday.
Maybe a little bit different than the Republican vision.
Yeah, a little bit. And then also now we have Biden dropping out of the presidential race and Kamala Harris getting the nod to become the new candidate on the Democratic side, leading into their national convention, which is coming up in a few weeks. So wild stuff. Arthur, I thought, said such a funny joke on our staff meeting today when he was like, saw somebody on Twitter said, "Hey, I was in a coma the last 2 weeks. Can anybody tell me what's been going on?" It's just like, if you were gone the last 2 weeks, man, so much has changed, at least in our part of the world. The world's much bigger than America. But in America, it's been a little wild. So why don't we jump in? And Ryan, you want to start out sharing a couple of your deep dive thoughts on a little bit of the political culture going on? And we will, in the end, we're going to get to Psalm 128 for sure, but we kind of start there because it's at the front of so many people's minds.
Yeah, I think, even giving this podcast today, you're like, I don't know, 24 hours from now, who knows? This is one of those seasons, you have those seasons where it's like these long periods where not much interesting happens, and then all of a sudden there's...
I miss those.
Yeah, I do miss those. I feel like they're fewer and farther between these days. But now, like, this is one of those seasons where you're like, things are changing all the time. And I think that's the area as followers of Jesus that we have to really lean into. And I'll come back to that in just a minute. But with the attempted assassination with Trump, there's a lot of conversation about, and we had that conversation too. Like, was Donald Trump protected? Was there, was his hand on Donald Trump, which is kind of a dicey phrase, right? You could say, well, yes, there was protection for Donald Trump. And I think in a lot of ways, I like to think of it, God's hand was on that bullet and moved it. I like to think of it a little bit more like that, because it wasn't just Donald Trump that was in danger, which he was clearly. And there was a miraculous sort of, anybody who looks at the video and has looked into it, if he hadn't turned his head just at that right moment, then, he wouldn't have been around anymore. But I think for a lot of us in America, what we dodged in that is kind of hard to explain. There was something this sort of tinderbox that we're in America right now. It's easy to maybe take for granted the fact that we've had a lot of even though we have a lot of political division and arguing and all of that, compared to what it could turn into. It's still on that place where it's like, Lord, continue to have your hand on the situation that it doesn't tip all the way over like that, And I think as I look at it, I was really grateful, but I continued to pray after that, like, Lord, have mercy on us. Not just that with the situation with Donald Trump, but the situation with everything that's going on in the politics in America right now. There's a real instability that's starting to shake in America. And a lot of people use that phrase shaking. And it's true. There is this shaking instability. Even as we're sitting here today in this podcast, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen in a few days. And for a lot of people, if their trust was really anchored into the political system of America, was really anchored into the pundits of America or the media or whatever it is, if they found their hope in that or found some semblance of stability in that, all of that is shaken right now because we don't know what's going to happen. We really don't. I mean, none of the four of us sitting down here in this basement know what Thursday afternoon is going to bring, or Friday afternoon, or Sunday. That all of that feels like a year's worth of news could happen between now and Sunday. But all of that just proves what we've known all along, which is that the kingdom of God is the unshakable kingdom. The kingdom of America is always shakeable, and I think we've enjoyed maybe a couple of generations of relative peace. Like we've had some shaking, but 2020 was, I mean, as maybe as cliche as it is at this point, but it's true. 2020 was a major sort of shaking of the world. We're in this sort of continued shaking, and a shaking is only good if it reminds you of the temporary nature of that kingdom. And I think that for a follower of Jesus, when the shaking comes, we go, oh yeah, Lord, jar me out of thinking that my stability comes from anything but you. Jar me out of the idea that American prosperity or even American justice or whatever it is that makes you excited and active in politics or whatever it is, none of that is the real stability of the world, and nor was it ever promised to be. And Jesus is the real stability of the world. He has a new kingdom. It's a different kingdom. And I think that this is an opportunity where we hear from a lot of people that, Christians really shouldn't speak into any of this. And the voices that are saying that, really, if we take a step back, are secular humanists going, hey, Christians, stay over there. We're gonna handle this stuff over here. Don't even worry about any of this. But I think this is a place where the church needs to be clear, and we need to be loud about this. Like, there's some things where you go, well, I don't know how loud we should be about this, or I don't know how loud we should be about this. This is something I think we could be very loud about, and this is really important for people to see this difference between us and the world, and going, look, I can root for America, I could pray for America, we should pray for America. We can do all of that. But at the end of the day, when people are freaked out, when people are panicked, when people don't know what to do, we have to draw them into a different kingdom. And we need to say, look, I might be, as an American, a little freaked out right now, but as a Christian, I'm fine. Like, I'm just fine. I'm not losing sleep. I can pray for America. I can continue to pray that we would be, a prosperous country, things like that are good. But ultimately, my prayer is that the kingdom of God grows more. And I think that this is the fertile ground for that. Like, this is the kind of, in the doldrums of times where nothing's really changing, you don't have these opportunities. I see this as a really big opportunity. Now, I will also say there's a bit of me that's hopeful for America. I think maybe we could make some choices that'll change. I think I'm going to continue to pray for America. I think there's for whatever reason, in a lot of Christian circles, it's been a little bit more acceptable to not like America, and that's whatever. And maybe in some circles, it's great to love America, whatever. But I think it's totally acceptable, totally great for Americans to pray for America, to pray that we could get through this and all of that. But even if that doesn't happen, it's like it's the Mark 12 sort of situation where Jesus takes the denarii, it's like, whose image is this? And it's Caesar. Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's. We're living in that exact time. This is the moment where God's showing us the image on the coin, and we're going, oh yeah, okay. This is a different sort of kingdom, and pay your taxes, fine, do your thing, do your stuff, but you need to know that the image on that coin is not my image. And this is these are the times that we're in right now where we get to really remind ourselves, remind each other, and be, I think, a beacon of hope for people that are feeling lost and confused. So very different than what I said last week, but it's similar.
I want to rewind on something too, because there was in our wonderful conversation that was edifying for you and me only. Because by the way, we didn't have Dalton in the back seat last week, and that's what happened when we don't have Dalton in the back seat.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is we didn't have Dalton.
That's right. Crashes. You better remember that.
So all you backseat drivers in the world, you're doing something good.
I remember getting your audio files, and I was like excited to listen to it because I hear all of these as they're happening, and I was so bummed. I was as bummed as anyone else.
The hand of the Lord on the wire that glitched?
I think so. I think so.
Sorry,
I think there was some maturing. There was some maturing of the message that we needed.
That's right to the point, even almost. So one of the things that I think was a really important question I'd asked you was like, what are you not saying? And I think that response, that conversation, and I feel like I can answer for you because I listened to you. We discussed it
like
before
when I say God, like God's hand was on that moment with Donald Trump or something. Like, what am I not saying?
Yeah, which I think is so important, because one of the issues we all are so painfully aware of right now is we're living in different silos. We're living in different contexts. We're speaking past each other, and we're not hearing what other people are saying. Yeah. And so I know that when you say, oh, maybe the Lord's hand was on it, maybe the Lord moved that bullet, I know that there are probably at least a half a dozen different vantage points from which people are hearing that.
Yeah.
And so some people I know are hearing that, and they're thinking, oh, what you're saying is that God endorses the character of Donald Trump. Sure. And anybody who votes for anything but him, is out of the alignment with the will of God. Yeah. And I know that's not what you're saying.
No.
100% not. In fact, if anybody continued to listen to everything you said after that, it's really clear. It's just, it's worth noting, okay, the Lord orchestrates everything. For sure. He's in control. And one of the things that I didn't say last week when we recorded, but I think I'm going to say today, that I may or may not have said before, but it's a scary thing to say. So
it sounds like this is going to be way better than last week.
I think so too.
We'll see, when in 2016, when I was praying about my vote, because I think as a follower of Jesus, we should pray about important things and unimportant things. And we should, even my message yesterday, right? Hear and obey God, walk in his ways.
Yeah.
And I think the Lord's going to lead each of us in different ways. So I prayed about my vote. And I do not feel like, I didn't feel the Lord told me that I needed to go share with a bunch of people what I heard the Lord say. So I may or may not have ever shared this in any public sense. I feel like I might have said it on the podcast, but maybe not. I might have chickened out in the past. But I felt like the Lord say that Donald Trump is going to be like a Nebuchadnezzar, but you don't have to vote for him. And I felt like the Lord was telling me that he was going to win. This would have been after he won the nomination, but before it was... felt like, he was had any shot of winning. And I didn't share that. I didn't go around telling people, I just felt like the Lord gave me freedom to say, hey, you don't need to cast your vote behind someone whose character is like this.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like I could vote for Hillary either, for reasons that are perhaps obvious. But it really was the same issue for both of them. The character was such a thing, and I was relieved that I felt like the Lord said, no, I don't need you to vote this way. For those of you who are curious, in 2020, I was outside of the country, and it was 2020, and I was physically unable to vote. Mail-in ballots weren't exactly working all the way to Asia during the pandemic. But what's so interesting is, and I thought about this when I was learning about the assassination attempt, right? Is like, you think of the character of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar is someone that the Lord used.
Yeah.
But the Lord did not endorse Nebuchadnezzar's character in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. In fact, the Lord even says, "Hey, woe to you that I used to accomplish this against my people Israel." Yeah. And then you have this really interesting character who's almost like an inverse Saul to some extent, where then Nebuchadnezzar comes in. He's this really gnarly guy. He's humbled. He gets wiped off the face of Babylonian politics for 7 years, I think, right?
Yeah,
7 times.
7 times, whatever times are. And then he's restored after it turns into an animal and weird stuff like that, or
feathers, man.
Thinks he's an animal, or and then he comes back and he's restored. And as soon as he's restored, what does he do? He praises the Lord. And I think and what's interesting is just like Saul, it's unclear. What is Saul among the prophets is what they say. Did Saul end up with the Lord? Did he not? It's a little unclear. Yeah. It's King a little Saul. Fuzzy. The Lord knows. Yeah, King Saul. And Nebuchadnezzar, I think same thing. Like I as I read the story of Nebuchadnezzar, I'm thinking, I don't know that the guy ended up hanging out with Jesus in eternity, but I don't necessarily know that he didn't, but I kind of think maybe not, but who knows?
Yeah, he wrote a chapter of the Bible.
But he wrote a chapter of the Bible and he gave glory to the Lord, as the emperor over the largest empire in the world at the time. Yeah. And at least I think the largest, maybe China was bigger, I don't know. And the first thing he did when he was restored was he gave glory to the Lord. And it's just interesting to me. Again, not an endorsement of the man's character or anything, and not even going to discuss policies, but that his first tweet after surviving that assassination attempt, you could pick it apart, you could question his character here and there and all that stuff. Yeah. But he did say, "God alone." Yeah. What did he say? I don't remember exactly the quote, but God alone moved the bullet, or God alone saved me.
Well, and I think this is where we tend to throw the baby out with the bathwater with some of this stuff, and I think it's kind of the sad, like we just get so weirded out, right, by going, maybe God could use someone like Donald Trump, or maybe God could use somebody like Joe Biden, or And it turns into, and I think it's kind of the straw man of the politics that we're in right now. It's like, oh, well, that means that you agree with everything that they like. It's like, no, there's almost, besides Jesus, there's nobody in the Bible that God's like, I endorse all the things about this person. There's just not. I mean, maybe King David gets close second, but still, King Saul. I mean, even when Samuel's warning the people, like, you don't want a king like this, there are warnings all over the place. Maybe a guy like Gideon or something, he's got some humility, but the end of Gideon's life is not good, so you look at, and it's interesting to me that there's so many Christians that are so quick to go, well, God couldn't use somebody like Donald Trump, or God couldn't use somebody. God uses everybody and all the things all the time. Like there's always something to find the Lord moving in. Yeah. And it doesn't mean it's a sign off on, the politics of the person or any of that, but
their character or their heart. Yeah. And I think even to just explicitly state it, right? Like whether or when they were knowingly or unknowingly submitting to the Lord, or knowingly or unknowingly resisting the Lord, God has used President Biden, President Trump, President Obama, President Bush, and on and on and on back. Yeah. The Lord uses those he places in power. The Lord uses all of his people, and the Lord is ultimately in control. Yeah. And so and one of the things we talked about too is, for those of us who see things like this unraveling or unfurling and happening, taking place, it's good to remember, I think, was it Acts 5? It was early on in the book of Acts we were talking about where the Jewish religious leaders had arrested some of the apostles and beaten them, and they were discussing what to do with them. And at some point in time, I think it was Gamaliel cleared the room and said, like, hey guys, like, they were charging the apostles not to preach anymore. And he said, hey, you ought to be careful because it's not clear whether these guys are like for the Lord or not for the Lord. If they're not for the Lord, what they do is going to dissolve. Yeah. And if they are for the Lord, then it won't, and you'll find yourself opposed to God. Yeah. And I just think there's a big important warning for us, dear. And that was something I felt on that Sunday when our AC was down right after the assassination attempt, that the Lord was telling me to share during second service, which is like we ought to be careful.
Yeah.
Because if there's anything we've noticed in the last 4 or 5 years, if you've been paying attention, is moments like this are full of traps.
Yes.
They're full of traps for our heart. They're full of traps for our lives. They're full of traps for our society. How many of us can look back on the way we lived through 2020 and 2021 and say, I fell into no traps? How many of you feel good about everything you posted? If you're honest with yourself, maybe I'm actually pretty proud of some of the people I know and love. I think the people in this room, I'm not embarrassed about anything I saw any of you guys post over those days, but there were traps left and right. And lots of people I know and trust who are wise people fell into some of those traps.
Yeah.
And so when a moment like this happens, like, let's be cautious, let's be careful, let's not assume we know the will of the Lord, and let's not assume that the people who are speaking as though they're speaking the will of the Lord are speaking the will of the Lord. Let's be cautious and slow to speak, quick to listen. Let's check in with the Holy Spirit. And actually, David, you are one of the people who I think came through 21 with a gold star in that regard. I was really proud. I know, gold star, man. Right there. I was watching 2020 from the other side of the planet, and I was watching living streams and all that, and I was so proud of the way you were living, the way you were leading living streams, and it was really clear to me that you were doing something that I've seen you do many times as someone who's been following your leadership since junior high, which is you were checking in with the Spirit, and you were listening to the Lord, and you avoided some traps. And I'm just wondering, could you speak to that a little bit? What did you learn, or what had you learned that prepped you for that, or what did you learn in that that enabled you to avoid traps where everybody was falling into them?
Yeah, I mean, I think our culture now is such an instant culture. So, I mean, I actually remember being on a call with Dalton one time, and I don't remember what the situation was, but it was night time, and Dalton called me and said, "Hey, we need to post something about this." And do you remember? I don't even remember what the situation was, but you were saying we need to post something about this. He said, "I don't care what we post, but we just need to post something." And I think you were right in that instance, and I forget what it was, and so I just wrote up a little something and we posted it.
It was in regards to racial injustice.
Racial injustice?
Yeah.
Was it Juneteenth, maybe?
No, it was, you wrote something about lament. It was about, I think it was surrounding the story of George Floyd and stuff like that. Yeah.
So it was like, and again, I'm not the most up to speed, up to date. Like, I have Facebook, Instagram, some of that stuff, but I it's like I use it for myself. Like, I use it when I want something from it, but I don't necessarily feel like I need to post everything, or keep up with it. But I feel that, and especially in 2020, it felt like there was so many things happening that we had to have a response, and it had to be good, and it had to be right away, and it had to be soundbite, and because some people are amazing at that. Like, I don't know, there's a little shout out to Shane Doherty here. I feel like Shane Doherty can come up with a quip on almost anything at any time that is hilarious. Nick Orso is kind of really quick like that.
Yeah.
And again, on big issues. So even like the Trump assassination attempt, what are we supposed to say? That happened on Saturday. And now it's Sunday morning. We're supposed to get up in front of our entire congregation.
We had no AC.
We've been working so hard on this message. You had been working so hard on this message. We've been in this Psalm series. And now none of that matters because at the front of everyone's mind is this intense, dramatic, graphic image that has completely permeated every part of society, and they've been given 47 points of view since then because everybody got their stuff out immediately because the news was already on it and Twitter was already on it and all these things. So I think one of the things that that helped was I'm a little slow. I'm like, until my gut sort of is in agreement with whatever my mouth is wanting to say or my mind is wanting to say, I don't feel comfortable going forward. Like it's got to get into my bones a little bit before I feel like I can speak it with the authority that, maybe I feel like the Lord has given me, or the responsibility that the Lord has given me. And so I do think that was part of it. And I remember, Ryan obviously was a huge part of that whole process in 2020 and 2015. And we made the joke, it was 15 days to flatten the curve was the big slogan, right? Like, we're going to flatten this curve in 15 days, then we'll be back to normal. Yeah. And so we just joked and we said, it's not 15 days to flatten the curve, but we can't plan past 15 days. And so we just started, doing shorter kind of plans. For the next 15 days, we're going to roll with this. And then we'll adjust it if we need to. And so I think making lots of little adjustments kept us from ending up in the ditch. I think
which a lot of people did end up in the ditch.
Slow to speak, which again it's like the antithesis of what's cool these days. Like, you have to be quick to speak, but the Bible is very clear. You should be slow to speak. And so I think for us, even more so when we're carrying this influence, when we're carrying this responsibility, that's some problem the media is having these days is they're so quick to speak and they're wrong all the time because they don't have all the information, but the responsibility that they have is so massive. I mean, the religious or not the freedom of speech, like this is huge. This is how wars are won and lost based on people's mindsets and what's being said and the propaganda. There's so much power in that. And that's what you said. It's like you said traps. I was thinking it's a manipulator's playground whenever there's a bomb that goes off in society of some sort. And so I think the safest thing to do is just sit. And just watch what happens. And pretty soon all of the liars get found out. And then it's like, well, I'm not going to go their way anymore.
I remember one of our politicians getting raked over the coals. I think it was over COVID or something in 2020. Probably COVID, saying, oh, never waste a good emergency. Or good tragedy or whatever.
Yeah, and I think this is the, and it is the trap of our time is the, push back on the be slow to speak and just say whatever is hitting your gut right now.
Or you're not being courageous if you're not saying anything.
Yes,
right? What?
Well, and pop culture is it's flowing left and right all over the place. And that's not even political, it's going all over the place. And some of the pundits, as we sit right now, some of the pundits who are, fiercely saying, hey, Joe Biden's fine. Now they're going, oh yeah, now we know that he's not so fine. And you're like, you didn't say that
3 weeks ago. You're like, you didn't change that much.
And it's fast enough that I think a lot of people that pay attention go, oh my gosh, like the rules are changing constantly. The rules of engagement, but I think that's it's a bit of a ploy of the enemy. It really destabilizes people. But the people of God have a real chance of being stable in that. I mean, I think that's where the enemy starts to get people unstable. We have an opportunity to be stable. And I think this is where, and even when each other, I think one of the things that, like being slow to judge what each other's saying, especially when we're talking about something like this. I mean, I can almost guarantee, we've said something that somebody on this podcast listening is like, oh, well, I don't know about that. Well, I don't know if they're aware of this. Like, there's just so many of those things that I think we have to be the place where, and we were talking about this last week. Like, I wish the church could really be, and I think we are probably more than most places, the place where we could do this, have like long form discussion. Let's talk about it and let's figure out how we're feeling about things, but not be quick to go, are you, then you must be a Marxist, or you must be worshiping Donald Trump, or you must, like, we just use these straw men against each other. And I mean, when I posted something after the attempted assassination, and oh my goodness, like I had
something
2,000
simple. Like that, pray kind of.
Yeah,
deal.
I said pray for Donald Trump, pray for our country. I said, Lord have mercy. And that post, I mean, I lost 2,000 followers in an hour, and the amount of people saying things on there that were just ugly and terrible. I was like, and the scary thing is it said on my analytics that 98% of them were followers of mine. So I was like these are probably Christians, and it's devolving to something really ugly, really fast.
For context, Ryan has a large social media following because Outcry, the tour that he
but I just,
years ago.
it was a real eye-opening thing for me. Like, I knew we were divided, But I go, man, the thing is for the church, and I think this is the warning of the church, like we have to learn to not do that to each other. Like it doesn't matter when you get on somebody's social media posts and go, well, what, the things that we say like that, like we really should stick out as something different. And it really, it causes a cloud of judgment against, one another.
I think to add context to, because you had brought that story up, David, about, I had called you.
Yeah.
To add context to that story, it was not like, because I know that one specific event in history kind of caused a lot of, like opinions and stuff like that. So it wasn't an opinion on the fact of whatever. Yeah. It was, there's a cultural moment where a large group of people are hurting.
Yeah.
And like, I look at it the same way as this Trump thing. Mm-hmm. I hate to even say this, but like conspiracy, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Did he deserve it? Whatever. There's no opinion about it. It's the fact that people, whether or not it was any of those things, got hurt. And it was a display of darkness, and it was the brokenness of humanity. Yeah.
Which is hard to argue with. You're like, on that level.
But we because that was I wasn't managing our socials at that time. I was just helping managing our socials. So that was like that. And then this Trump thing was like, and of course COVID, but like just the display of like, well, he or she deserved it, or you know what I mean? Like just some really
a lot of comments on that post of like, oh, they missed, bummer, and it wasn't just a couple. Like if it was like 3 or 4. But man, it was so many that I think, and I think I maybe contrary, like a little different than David. I'm like, man, I like to know what's going on. I'm always like paying attention. That felt like it was a surprise to me, and I'm always like, oh man, Lord, I think things are more, of a pressure cooker than we think they are. And that's why I say, man, at least for now in this moment, there was something that was averted with that assassination attempt, that it didn't turn into an assassination, that it was an attempt. And I can't help but feel that it was a grace of God on us, not a statement on Trump and any of that. It's something for America, that the tinderbox of America. And this was something I said last week. There's this almost this sense with people that they're hoping for some chaos. Like I can feel it in the air. I don't know what it is, but there are people on all different spectrums of the political spectrum that are hoping things turn into chaos.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things that you hope happens until it actually happens, and then you go, oh shoot. And my prayer, and especially the day after, it was one of the things I prayed at church, was that this wouldn't turn into a fire that burns out of control, because that has happened. And God can use a situation like that as well. But Lord, have mercy on us. Let it not get to that point.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, that the people that are hoping for chaos, they don't know what they're hoping for.
This might come out of nowhere a little bit, but you guys are talking about the hand of the Lord. I mean, that was the phrase I used the next day, because we were just having non-stage conversations. We were just saying, man, what are you feeling about this? Because we actually are friends, and we don't only talk on podcasts. But
this is the conversations we have sometimes.
That was the one thing that I was, it was like, I felt in some ways like I was testing out on you. Like I was saying, here's a couple things I'm thinking. What did you like, and bouncing them off you guys. And one of them was, I just can't help to get this sense that after watching that assassination attempt, that the hand of the Lord is on Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Like it seems like the Lord's hand is on him. Now listen carefully. Don't stop listening right now. To what end, I have no idea.
Yes, yeah.
To what end, I have no idea. The hand of the Lord is on him to be president? I don't know.
Yeah.
The hand of the Lord to not be president? I don't know. That's not saying the hand of the Lord was not on President Biden or Vice President Harris. I just think that was so unique in that sense. It was like, okay, something seems to be at work here to spare his life, at least for that day or till now. Yeah. And there's nothing necessarily wrong in saying that. And again, to what end, I don't know. That doesn't mean that, he's perfect in any way.
Yeah.
The second thing, though, that really was, again, I have issues with things that I've seen or perceived from Trump. But the second thing was, I really felt like I wanted to pray that exactly what you said, that Trump didn't take this opportunity and kaboom. Like he could have gone a lot of different ways with this thing.
He really could have.
And what I thought of his character would have made me nervous that he might take this thing and really fight fire with fire. Like turn this into something so like Trump is a god or or see God is for me because and yet what happened in the Republican National Convention and then that Twitter post you're saying was there was a clear saying, I'm here by the grace of Almighty God.
Yeah.
And whether he's saying that politically motivated so he can get more Christians to vote for him, I don't know. I'm not saying I know one way or another. But
that's between him and the
said
Lord.
That instead of all the other things. Now, I know he's been reserved lately, and I think he's holding back some stuff, which is fine. And I don't know, and I don't know if he does become president, if all of a sudden he'll get rid of that reservation, or hopefully he'll see that humility, that reservation is actually serving him and the country much better. I don't know. But we have yet to see those things. But I think it could have gotten a lot worse or a lot weirder, or a manipulator could have really taken advantage of that. And I didn't see what I was afraid of.
One of the most interesting moments in the RNC, I remember I was watching it and I smiled. I was like, this is very interesting. Because you and me and David McVicker were texting about it. David was like the RNC was getting a little too close to being like, Trump is
Trump
like,
worship.
Yeah, Trump worship. And it was. I mean, people were chanting and cheering, all this stuff. So there was one moment that I was paying attention to when he said the line, "I shouldn't be here today." Yeah. And then everyone started saying, "Yes, you should have," or I can't remember what it was. It was a weird chant. I was like, "This is kind of weird, you guys." Yeah,
yes, you should. They just chant. Like
and I had a caricature of a guy that was like starting that chant. And I was like, "Just guys, just can you be quiet just for a minute?" Yeah. And he said, no. He said, "Thank you." He said, "But no, I shouldn't have been here today. It's only by the grace of God, basically, that I'm standing here." And it is a humble move because it's one of those things that you could go, well, he could be the guy that says, "Look, I'm the leader who bends bullets. Look, nothing can take me down." Or look at how far things have gotten. We need to go into the streets right now. Like these are the kind of things that, again, it could have gone 1,000 ways. And us saying this, it's like one of those where I'm going, gosh, I hate that it's being read as, I don't know, more conservative or something. No, there's that part of me that, again, and I said this to David McVicker, I said, I have a very be cautious and just wait. Mm-hmm. Just be cautious and wait and watch. Yeah. Could Donald Trump surprise everybody? He could. I don't know. Could he turn back to the way he was? And he could, absolutely, but I think that's why the initial thing, my very first point is that is not our primary kingdom. Mm-hmm. And if we're coming at it like that, then we can have this, I hate to say it, this sort of unemotional curiosity about the moment and go, I wonder if the Lord's going to use Donald Trump. Yeah. I wonder if the Lord's going to use Kamala Harris. I wonder, who knows what's going to happen.
I mean, that's now we have on the Democratic side, President Biden has decided it's better for our country if I pull out of the race. Yeah. Or for him, or I don't know all the motivations, whatever. But in some ways, I think, we should get the best candidates forward. And if he's realizing and they're realizing this is not the best candidate, let's get a better candidate forward. Yeah. I mean, that's good for America to get the best possible candidates. Now, again, whether you think Harris is better or worse, that's a whole nother thing. Yeah. But I do think that, we have to root for America.
Yes.
We have to root for righteousness. We have to root for humility in whoever's. We have to hope to see the best version of whoever they might be. And just like you said, maybe you think Harris is a horrible candidate or her views are things. And I know she has views that are very anti-biblical and I have issue with those 100%. But even she could change.
You'd never know.
You know, if the Lord,
you just never know.
You know, works in that way. And so I think that's where we have to, as Christians, be rooted in the kingdom of heaven.
Yes.
But live and breathe in this world and do the best that we can. But keeping those things in perspective. And I think Psalms, I'm going to move us into Psalms now.
Great.
Just to make sure that we dive deep into this. But I think it makes a lot of sense. Alex, your message on, I said Alec. It sounded like Alex to me.
That's right.
It's Alec, yeah.
He's so
Alex message.
I'm pretty sure you know my name.
Alex message. It was like, that sounded like Alex. Alec.
We're sensitive to that because he gets that a lot.
Took me until 8th grade to figure out how to do that.
So it really is and you called it the roadmap to the good life. And I think that's what is really happening is we're all trying to figure out politics. And politics is who should have the power and how should they use it to create the most possibility for the good life for the most people. I mean, that's what it's all breaking down to. And that's why this is a passionate thing. That's why we are involved, whether you like it or not. Everything we do is politics because it's either creating more opportunity for people to find the good life or not. Now, we differ on what the good life is.
Sure.
We differ on how to get there, all those things. But we have in the book of Psalms 128 an actual, like, ancient, past the test of time, God-inspired, you know, served communities all over the world for so long, a roadmap that describes what the good life is. And so I want to make sure we kind of do our little bits of what is the good life? What can we add to that conversation in this? What is the good life? And then how do we get there? And you want to touch a couple quick points on your message just to bring everybody up to speed on that?
Yeah, I mean, and so really simply, and I think just for the context, we'll keep this part of the deep dive shorter than we usually would. It is easy to just pass over, like I did in my message, that kind of face value part of Psalm 128, which is it's giving you the Sweet Home Alabama vibes, the country roads vibes, you know, the that's the life I want. You know, it's painting a picture of, you know, it talks about, you know, blessed is the one who insert roadmap to the good life. It says fears the Lord and walks in his ways, and the life that they're living, it's like this fruitful life where they eat the fruit of their labor. Their wife is like a fruitful vine in the home. And I was just thinking, like, imagine just a big old grapevine all throughout the home. And in a world where you don't have a refrigerator, it's like, oh, there's nice, cool, refreshing, sweet food in the house. You know how sweet that is. And your children are like olive shoots. And if you've ever seen like an olive tree, it's got all those little shoots that pop up all the time that eventually turn into a bush. And if you own one, it's like a pain in the butt to keep those olive shoots trimmed down. It's just saying you got so many kids and there's so much blessing, and the Lord blesses. And then it says, this is the blessing that the Lord speaks over you, that you would see the goodness of Jerusalem, that you would have a good life, that you would see the shalom, the peace of Israel and all this. And it's simply just trying to wash us in an imagery of this desire for good life. And we dove into the parallelistic structure for that. And if anybody's interested on that, by the way, I wanted to mention that if you go to bibleproject.org/classrooms, Bible Project has these free classes. They're not just their YouTube videos, but these like lecture series classes that are really good. And the intro to the Hebrew Bible class is so good and profoundly unpacks those kind of parallelistic structures in a way that'll really will positively transform your capacity to read and understand the entirety of the Hebrew Scriptures. I'd recommend that to anybody who's willing to learn a little bit.
Which it's really beautiful, right? Like I just think the way that we look at language now, it's like keep it pithy, keep it short, get in, get out. The Hebrew Bible is not that.
No.
I mean, there's structure in it that's interesting. There's visual structure. There's, you were talking about the chiastic structure of some of these. And the book of Psalms is that. I mean, these poems. And it's like taking time with things that we just don't give ourselves time to do anymore, you know. But yeah, the Bible Project, anything Tim Mackey.
So good, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and there's even, you can Google around a little bit. I found a couple of websites that had made an attempt at outlining the parallelistic or chiastic structures of all of the Psalms. So you can dive a little bit deeper into what that looks like. And if you're not tracking with me, you can go back and listen to the message. I don't think we need to talk too much about chiastic structures today.
You know, I love the way this is laid out. Verse 2, 3, and 4 of this psalm really describes what this psalmist, inspired by the Spirit of God, is wanting us to understand the good life is. And he says that you will eat the fruit of your labor.
Yeah.
And I think that just phrase right there, because obviously we've heard all the rap songs about, the money, 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 money.
Yeah.
And it's like what he's saying here is that the good life is not necessarily having all the money in the world.
Yeah.
It's being able to work and have the produce. Work and have the produce. And you think about Israel as far as so much of their history has, the slavery reality, where that's where in Egypt they were working and somebody else was eating the labor.
Yeah.
Or eating the fruit of the labor.
And again, this is right after Psalm 127. And so at least the editor who put these two Psalms together, if not the original psalmist, is juxtaposing the bread of anxious toil and the fruit of your labor. And so
which we did have something interesting to say about that last week.
We may or may not, no promises, but we might be able to squeeze in an audio-only unpack of last week. We'll see. No promises.
We talked about the toil of bread and at how it's like considered toil, and the fruit, how it's considered like this easy thing, and the connection with the Eucharist, like the bread and the wine and the works of the Lord, not our own. It's fun. There's more of a thread to pull. I mean, I feel like that's enough to say to give people like, oh yeah, that's an interesting thought. But that's a thread to pull for sure.
Yeah. But I love that, and especially from that slave kind of mindset and context coming out of that. It's such a special thing to be able to work and then to be able to enjoy the reward of that. And I think we as Christians, this is a big deal. The American promise of prosperity, the greed that is here, we have to be careful. The kingdom of heaven has not promised us that we'll be rich and get to do whatever we want. It's that we'll have enough. And that we'll be able to work hard and then enjoy some of that, and work hard and enjoy some of that. And so we need to really make sure we're kind of dialed in there. That's the good life. Not what the songs are telling us, whatever, that's good. And then the next thing he says, your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house. So go ahead, guys, have fun with that. I'm joking.
We can
It's so funny, but just I think it was yesterday or the day before.
See all of Nancy Pearcey's writings ever.
It was either yesterday or the day before. We were driving, and my wife was saying something I think we were listening to a podcast or something, and there was a lady was saying something about how okay, and I'm saying this as her words, and it'll make sense in just a minute. But it was it was how women today have been sold a lie that if they do not have success outside of the home, they have no success.
Yeah.
If they do not, become a fruitful vine in a career or a fruitful vine in something else outside the home, they are not really doing much. And then what ends up happening is a lot of them, for the most part, have this real desire to be fruitful in the home. And now they also need to be fruitful outside. And it becomes this very anxious reality of you're having to succeed in both, and you don't have the capacity maybe to do that. And so she was saying, someone in our church needs to say this. And she's like, David, you can't say it because you're a man. But someone in our church, we need to get a woman to get up there and say this to the women to set them free from this impossible reality.
That's true.
And it doesn't mean that some women can't be successful and fruitful outside the home. Not saying that at all. That's what we're not saying. But what we are saying is being fruitful within the home is a picture of the good life according to the scriptures and the Psalms.
When we did say that, it just the audio file got deleted.
I was going to say we talked about it a lot.
That's what killed the audio.
Because Alec was talking about the blessing of children, and we were talking about how that just we don't talk about that anymore. We look at children as a burden and a financial weight and. But it's back to the blessing of the family and the home. And this is one thing I think, if you are paying attention to the voices that are in pop culture that are trying to diminish that, you have to know that that to me, I think is a very clear, like steal, kill, destroy sort of situation. And we were talking about this. We're like, if you're curious, we ended up talking about environmentalism too. But environmentalism as an example of that. Like, taking care of the planet, taking care of your environment, not polluting, all of that stuff is really, really good. The minute that ideology turns into an anti-human ideology, and it's subtle, but as soon as it turns into, hey, if there was less humans, it'd be a lot better. Like, the enemy has overtipped his hand. Like, this is now oh, shoot, now I see what's going on here. Mm-hmm. When the enemy is coming up against families, and this was something that in 2020 we were wrestling a lot with. And it was one of your bolder sermons, but I remember when the pressure on us to be like, come out and support BLM. And one of the sermons, I still remember you called us and called the elders, and you're like, I think I'm going to say we can't do that. And why? Because it's got its roots in a real kind of militant Marxism that for a while, even on their website, they're very open saying, hey, we're against the nuclear family. Well, what does that mean? Well, again, this is that area where the enemy will overtip their hand. They'll take something where you go, oh, that sounds really good and altruistic, but it turns into this thing that's against humans, it's against family, it's against, it's divisive, and it makes you, like, whenever you feel like humans are a cancer, like, what do you do with cancer? You eliminate it. You like you like if you just take a step back, you go, we're in dicey territory if that's our philosophy. And I think being able to step back, one of those things when you're talking about the home, like, and I think this is not just, and it is for there's a word in it for women, but I think there's a word in it for men too. Like, your home is a prize. It is. It's not just the thing that you like stumble into at the end of the day when you barely have any energy left. Like, that should be the place that's the prize. And there should be this beautiful interchange between man and wife in that, and some of that the wife is building and some of that the man is building. And so that not any one person is carrying the weight of that. But if you don't have that, if the home is not the prize, then there's a problem there.
And that's what I was referencing, really, everybody in the world would do well to read everything Nancy Pearcey has written.
Agreed.
But in her most recent book, The Toxic War on Masculinity, that's one of the things that she traces that is, oh man, she's like a surgeon. And such a great like meta-analyst of society and what's going on. But
every word of hers matters.
It's so good.
It's like she's not flipping with anything.
But one of the things that she pointed out that was so key in this particular subject, and I'll put it in my own words, and you can just read her book on it to hear her words articulated much better than mine. But it's a lie that our culture has told that to women that you're going to find your primary value in your job, in your anxious toil, in your in the hustle, in climbing the ladder. It's a lie that they've believed, and that lie started being told around the 60s and 70s in the feminist movement, which started off as a pretty good thing, really defending some women who needed some defense and some protection, and but turned into this thing of like, hey, they recognize that one of the inherent barriers, one of the vulnerabilities of women is the reality that women are kind of stuck in a situation where they're vulnerable to abuse because of biology, because of the fact that that they're the ones that bear children in their bodies, and that subjects them to what seems to be a bent towards economic dependence on a husband and and a whole other things. Which
Nancy Pearcey does a very good job of doing.
So the feminists,
that's succinct. It's like it doesn't quite do it justice. But her
and
book
she's
does.
a woman.
So the feminists recognize this.
But she did an excellent job of
if
that.
you listen to feminist theory, that's like foundational, right? So the feminist theory recognizes this as an issue and a hurdle and a vulnerability, and then their solution is, well, what we need to do is we need to make women not equal to men, but the same as men. And so men have this economic, in our current society, back in the 60s and 70s, have this opportunity to go out into the workplace and get their economic stability that gives them leverage and control and da-da-da-da. But the thing is, if you trace that back a little bit further, you realize that the reason we found ourselves in a situation where men had this freedom that women did not have, economically speaking, which can be found in lots of different societal structures, but especially so at that point in time in our history, because we were in a society that only for a generation or so had been industrialized. And it was the Industrial Revolution before the Sexual Revolution that took men outside of the home. If it was the sexual revolution that took women outside, it was the industrial that took men outside. Because of who's going to work at the steel mill? Well, obviously the husband, because they're the ones who are physically able to, and they're the ones who are prone to say, I'll put myself in danger. And that kept them outside of the home when it became the corporate office instead of the steel mill. But the thing is, it was a lie that men needed to start going to the steel mill to find their value and their worth, and that they're going to find something more meaningful there in the bread of anxious toil than they will with the fruit of the womb with their children in the home. And so it was a lie when it was told to women, and it was a lie when it was told to men. And the solution is not to rewind to the 50s when men are believing the lie and women aren't, but the solution is to go forward to a place where none of us are believing that lie, and we're understanding that children are more valuable than our produce, and we should be engaging in the fruit of our labor and enjoying the fruit of the womb, but not devoting ourselves to the bread of anxious toil. And really all of that in alignment with what the Lord is doing with His vision of the good life.
Well, I think that's this psalm, which is it's so profound, right? It's just some simple words written so long ago, been translated in English, but it is pointing that it's, don't think the fruit of your labor is not enough. Like what you work for and what you gain. If you have one tree with the apples on it, eat those apples. Like you're not going to be happy when you have a bigger savings account or happier. Yeah. That's a choice you're making right now. Yeah. Having a food on the table, having the fruit of your labor that you can enjoy, that you can share with your wife and kids. That's the good life. Yeah. And then the next thing is, it's not just your wife will be experiencing the good life when she's fruitful. No, it's you. Yeah. When you come home and you have a wife who's fulfilled and is fruitful in what she's doing in her life. That's your good life. So work to that end. Yes. She's got to get her act together. No, you invest into that situation and vice versa. If the wife's the one that has a job outside the home, all of that's fine, but you invest in each other. That's the good life. Having a happy wife. Happy life.
I'm always slow to share stories like this because I haven't talked to Blake about it. But Blake and I were just talking about something, and she was like, "Yeah, I got to do this thing, and it's going to cost some money." And she's like, "I just feel really selfish." It's something that's going to help her in terms of health. And my immediate guttural reaction was like, "Of course it's not selfish, and it's fine." Because what do I know as a husband? I'm like, if she starts feeling better and starts doing better, I know I'm going to be doing better.
And if she doesn't, that ship going down.
Yes, totally. And so that's the thing. It's like the quintessential put the oxygen mask on yourself kind of situation. But I'm like, Blakey, go for it. But
put
that's
the oxygen mask on your wife first.
Yes.
And then everybody else after.
Yeah. But again, if my goal was more money in the account, I would go, ooh, yeah, let's not spend money on that. And let's not do that. And if that was my goal, it would seriously hinder the fruitfulness of my home, And that all those little decisions, even the little ones that don't seem like a big deal, those are the little moments where you get to push back on that idea and go, no, let me remind myself that the fruit of my home is the prize.
And the children, that's the next one. It says your children like olive shoots, which the sermon before, Psalm 126, 127, you really touched on that and how important it is for us to have that mindset. And there's a tension between prosperity and children in our culture. If I have children, I won't be able to have the kind of freedom and prosperity I want financially. Yeah. But the good life is the children. We've got to understand that. And if you can't have children, you actually really, really ministered into that reality a whole bunch with that sermon. That was 2 weeks ago if you want to listen to the podcast. But important stuff. And yes, this will be the blessing is what the next refrain says in this psalm is no, this is the blessing. You described Ashar as the one who eats ice cream. Yeah. It's not a blessing is to come. No, you're eating ice cream right now. You blessed. Hashtag blessed.
You blessed.
And that's the Ashar. And that's what is happening is here is it's not, do these things and then you get the blessing. It's pay attention to your children and give them the highest place. Pay attention to your wife, give them the highest place. Be satisfied with what the Lord has provided. Yeah. That is and you are blessed. You are enjoying the ice cream right there.
Yeah. Well, and it can happen anywhere. I mean, right now we're in this room, we're getting to talk about, hanging out with our friends, talking about stuff. It's just having that awareness of oh no, there's a blessing happening right now.
Yeah. And so often we miss it. Yeah. Because the world's telling us, you need that.
Yeah.
Or we see the commercial, there's Cool Ranch Doritos. I can't be blessed until I have some Cool Ranch Doritos, you know.
I do like Cool Ranch Doritos.
But we miss it right here.
And that's what I love is the simplicity in verse 1 and echoed in verse 4, right? Is that there is that roadmap. And like we were talking about in the first half of the podcast, right? Like our world has a view, as a perspective of what is the roadmap, how do we get there? Well, actually thousands of them. Is it Trump? Is it Biden? Is it Kamala? Is it, hey, I'm moving away from America? Is it, all these different things?
Is it money? Is it sex?
Is it, do we need a better social system? Do we need this? Do we need that? It's sensuality. Is it stoicism? All these things. Is it Doritos? They're pretty sensual, those Doritos,
Never saw it.
Sorry, that was a weird one. But
David just looked in the corner like,
I'm never going to again. But what is it? And this psalm actually lays out the first steps to the good life. And actually in the first half says, actually, these two steps are the good life. Like they're synonymous with it. And it's fear the Lord in that, not in that like, I'm scared of you, you're going to hit me kind of way, but in that fear the ocean because it's beautiful and powerful and majestic, and I'm getting caught up in the waves. And I loved you were saying before you were adding that metaphor before we were recording today of like, hey, even like children play in the ocean, like it's this safe thing that's so terrifying.
There's a playground.
One of the word pictures I used a few weeks ago was like the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
It's scary. You get up to it and you go, this thing is huge.
Yeah.
But it draws everything to it because it's like it's big and dangerous and scary, but it's beautiful
and majestic and tranquil, and that is the Lord, and that is what that word means to have an. I almost wonder if, or my dad, it was the one who cued me on that. Maybe the awe of the Lord might be a better translation there. So it's the awe of the Lord, it's the fear of the Lord, and it's walking in his ways. This is the good life. You want to know how to have the good life? Walk in his ways. And one of the things that got chopped, and I'll be consistent because I know we're running low here on we got to get going in a minute, but the idea of the transcendentals, right? Which was a fancy word that Tim Hessman cued me in on when I was talking about these things and didn't know what I was saying. The transcendentals are, they talk about good, what's good, what's true, and what's beautiful. These are three things that there's discussion about what all things that transcend among philosophers, but these are three things that are pretty mostly agreed upon, that at least these three are transcendent, universally transcendent. They're not tangible, they're not material, but they're very real. They're universally acknowledged and they transcend. Good, true, beautiful. And when we talk about asher, when we talk about the good life, we talk about blessed in this sense. But we're saying like, hey, to fear the Lord and to walk in his ways, this is blessed. It's because it's good, because it's functional. People, not endorsement of everything he says, but Jordan Peterson has been drawn into the religious by the good. If you've listened to him, he's fascinated with the idea that this stuff works. Yeah. That if you walk in the ways of the Lord, you will live the good life. That's why he has 12 rules for life and 12 more rules for life. He's trying to say, here's rules that are asher, that are blessed, that lead to goodness in life. My hope is that eventually he comes to see the truth and the beauty.
There's some more.
And actually to know Jesus as a genuine personal God and not just a disembodied spirit of goodness.
And even if you have the right rules, you need the strength.
You need the spirit
of God to
because you can't walk in his ways without his strength because you're broken. And you can't have his strength unless you're holding his hand.
All right, well, let me try and wrap this thing up. I think I have a good, here comes the ribbon. Somebody put their finger out. I need the finger to get the tie. I don't know. So I love this. One thing it says at the end here is, may you live to see your children's children. And it might sound weird, but for probably about maybe 15 years now, that's been a dream of mine. People are like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a grandpa. And part of that is because both my mom and dad passed away early, and they didn't get to meet my kids. So there's something in me that's just so longing to be able to step into that. That's the good life. I don't care. I could be poor, I could be broken, but to be able to be in that moment seems like a real asher type moment. But But then here, what it does say, and this is going back to a little bit of what you were saying in the first half of our discussion when we were a little bit more in the America and the politics, and we're in the Psalms of Ascent, which are very focused on Jerusalem and even Zion, which is kind of this kingdom of God version of Jerusalem that everyone's trying to attain or aspire to. And this psalm ends just like many of the Psalms of Ascent. May the Lord bless you from Zion. May you see the prosperity of Jerusalem. Peace be on Israel is the last phrase. And I think that is another aspirational aspect of the good life that I think you were saying, where sometimes we get into this thing where we almost want to see the destruction of something. America has hurt us, or America is corrupt. We want to see her destroyed, or this president is bad, or he's said horrible things. We would love to see him taken out. Yeah. Biden has been such a bad this or that, and so it's. I mean, I don't want him just out of the presidency. I want him punished, right? Like, and again, I mean, I get those sentiments. I don't think necessarily those sentiments are wrong, but the goal is that we would have the prosperity, like that our nation would turn towards God, that our nation would fear the Lord and obedience. Even the bad guys would have a change of heart. Even the bad leaders would be able to see the light and come and walk in God's ways and experience, the blessing from God, from Zion, that would experience the prosperity of America. And we've had lots of prosperity. And again, prosperity, we have to be careful with that word, right? It's not the good life as the rap songs would tell us. It's the prosperity according to the values of the kingdom of heaven, which we just talked about. Yeah, it's the good. Edenic. And then the peace be on Israel. And that's ultimately what we want to speak over our city, over our church, over each other's lives, over our nation, over President Biden, over President Trump, their families, over President or Vice President Harris. We want to speak peace over these things. We long for the peace of God to settle into our country. And the opposite of peace is the slander. The opposite of the peace is the manipulation, the lies, all these things. And so we want to speak peace over all of these things. And that's what we're trying to do with our actions, with our words, with our kind of even digging in and trying to get to the bottom of what's really happening, or our patient kind of like, well, let's just wait and see before we speak. Let's be slow to speak. It's so that we can speak peace, and not a fake peace. I love when Jesus says, "Peace I live with you, not as the world gives." There was a worldly peace, and then there's a Jesus peace, and we want to live in the Jesus peace so that we can share the Jesus peace with people who either don't have peace or they got the worldly version, which is not that great either.
Yeah. That's good.
That's a little wrap up. Thank you, Psalms of Ascent. Thank you, whoever wrote this psalm so many years ago, and we're still talking about it today. Thank you, Alec, for digging us into it this last Sunday. And we'll be back into another psalm, Psalm 130, this Sunday, another Psalm of Ascent. We got 2 more weeks there. And it's going to be good. Bring a friend to church Sunday. Bring yourself, bring a friend. And as always, you can share your comments. We'd love to hear your feedback. I mean, maybe not some of the feedback Ryan was getting on his Twitter post, but
yeah, a little bit different. That'd be appreciated.
But yeah, any questions or this was hard to hear when you said this. We love all of that, and we'll definitely engage and or you can email us at the church or whatever. But God bless you, peace be upon you, and we'll catch you on the next time.